The small alien girl sat in the shadows, her eyes wide with fear as she watched the giant creature approach. She had heard the terrifying stories. The humans were ruthless, cruel beings that devoured anything in their path. She had always been told to stay far away from them, to hide whenever they appeared. But now she had no choice. She was trapped. Her skin was a soft shade of purple, and her large round eyes sparkled with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Her tiny body, no larger than a human child, shivered as she crouched behind a pile of debris, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been on this foreign planet for what seemed like days, searching for food and shelter. But now, a human had found her. The creature, no, the human, was huge, towering over her by several feet. His armor glinted in the sunlight, and his face was hidden behind a strange mask. He held something in his hands, but she couldn't make out what it was. The girl instinctively shrank back, her fear taking over. Was he here to kill her? Was he going to eat her like the stories had said? As the human approached, she could feel her legs trembling. Her sharp, pointed ears twitched, listening for any sign of movement around her. There was nowhere to run. She was cornered. Her small, delicate fingers gripped the rough surface of the debris, trying to find something, anything, that could protect her. But there was nothing. The human stopped a few feet away from her. His boots scraped the ground as he knelt down, peering at her with curiosity. The girl could only see his eyes through the slits in his helmet, and they were not what she had expected. They were calm, not filled with the malice she had imagined. They were gentle. For a moment, the girl hesitated. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, to run as fast as her tiny legs would carry her. But there was something about the way the human looked at her that made her pause. She had never been this close to one before. They were always so far away, so dangerous. But now here he was, right in front of her. The human tilted his head, and the girl watched, her breath caught in her throat. He made no move to harm her. He didn't even seem threatening. His eyes softened, and his body language suggested that he wasn't going to hurt her. But still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was going to happen. The girl took a slow, cautious step backward, her heart racing. Her feet slid slightly on the dusty ground, and she stumbled. The human didn't react, still watching her with those strange, calm eyes. He reached out with one hand, but the girl recoiled, her instincts telling her to run, to escape. She had heard of humans using traps. Was this one of them? The human's hand stopped in midair, and he slowly lowered it, clearly not wanting to scare her any more than she already was. His voice, muffled by the helmet, was soft and soothing. Though she couldn't understand the words, she didn't know if he was speaking to her or just to himself, but his tone was gentle, unlike anything she'd been told about humans. She stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Why is he not attacking? She thought, her mind racing. She had been taught that humans were predators, that they would hurt her the moment they found her. But here was this one sitting before her, not making any sudden movements. There was no roar, no violence in his eyes, only curiosity. She had heard stories of humans capturing aliens like her, locking them in cages or using them as trophies. But this human was not like the ones in those stories. This one didn't seem to want to harm her. But how could she be sure? How could she trust him? The girl shifted nervously, her feet barely making a sound as she tried to move farther back into the shadows. The human didn't follow. He merely sat there, his gaze locked onto her, as if waiting for her to make the next move. For a long, uncomfortable moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them was silent except for the distant sounds of the planet's wind and the soft rustling of leaves. The girl felt a strange sense of peace settle over her, though she couldn't explain why. The human's presence was unlike any threat she had ever imagined. Could it be possible that he wasn't a threat at all? The human slowly removed his helmet, revealing his face. A face that was human, yes, but also filled with something she had not expected. Kindness. He looked at her with an expression that was not one of anger or malice, but one of concern. He spoke again, But this time the girl still didn't understand the words, but it didn't matter. His voice was soft, his tone non-threatening. The girl remained motionless, her tiny body trembling as the human slowly removed his helmet. His face was not what she had expected. There was no cruelty, no sharp features that would signify a dangerous predator. Instead, his face was soft, almost gentle, with eyes that seemed to carry an unspoken kindness. His features were human, yes, but there was something in them that made her pause. She had never seen a face like this before. Her first instinct was to flee. Her legs burned to run, to find a safe place where she could hide from the unknown. But for some reason, her feet remained glued to the ground. Something held her there, some strange force that she couldn't explain. Perhaps it was his calm demeanor or the way his gaze held no malice. Whatever it was, it kept her frozen in place. The human, noticing her hesitation, took a small step back. His eyes never left her, and he extended his hand slowly, palm up, in an offering. It was the gentlest of gestures, as if he were asking for nothing in return. The girl stared at his hand, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what to make of this. Had she misjudged him? Was this part of his plan to catch her off guard? His hand remained still, not reaching toward her, not forcing her into any action. He simply waited, patiently, as though giving her the time she needed to decide what to do. The girl's mind raced. She had always been told that humans were merciless, that they would never give anyone a chance to escape. Yet here was one, giving her an opportunity to make a choice. What was he expecting? The silence between them stretched for what seemed like an eternity. The girl could feel her pulse in her ears, her body caught between fight or flight, but her instincts, the same ones that had kept her alive until now, seemed to quiet as the minutes passed. She realized that there was no immediate threat from him. There was no anger in his posture, no weapon raised to strike her down. The human was not reacting with the violence she had been taught to expect. Was it possible that this human was different from all the others? The girl's eyes flicked back to his face, searching for any sign of deceit, but she found none. His expression was steady, his gaze gentle but firm, as though he had no intention of causing her harm. He did not seem like the monster she had imagined. No, this human was not a hunter, and perhaps she could trust him. Slowly, cautiously, she took a step forward. She could hear her own breath as it quickened, her tiny feet making soft scratches against the dirt. She didn't know why she was moving closer. Fear still gripped her, but a part of her felt compelled to find out more. What was this human really like? Could she truly risk everything on this strange, seemingly kind creature? As she approached him, the girl noticed something else. His eyes, those deep brown eyes, were full of curiosity. He was studying her as much as she was studying him. He wasn't a predator waiting to pounce. He was just observing, as though he was trying to understand her as much as she was trying to understand him. It was a look she had never seen before in anyone, let alone a human. With each step she felt her fear slowly dissipating, replaced by a new, unfamiliar feeling. Was it hope? Or maybe confusion? She didn't know, but it was enough to keep her moving forward. She was close now, only a few feet away, and she could feel the heat of his hand still hovering in the air. He hadn't moved it closer, hadn't tried to touch her. He was waiting for her. The girl's mind spun in circles as she continued to inch forward, unable to fully grasp the situation. But then, something unexpected happened. The human, still holding his hand out, slowly knelt down, bringing himself closer to her level. His actions were deliberate, slow, and completely non-threatening. He wasn't towering over her anymore, and the distance between them felt less imposing. This shift was subtle, but it was enough. It was enough for the girl to stop her retreat. Her heart still raced, but it wasn't just from fear now. Something else stirred inside her, a mix of curiosity and a quiet sense of wonder. This human was different. She didn't know why, but she knew it in her gut. There was no threat here, not in the way she had always been taught to expect. Her breath caught in her throat as the human's eyes softened and he spoke again, this time without any harshness or command. The words were foreign, but his voice, so gentle, so calm, was like a balm to her frazzled nerves. She couldn't understand him, but she didn't need to. His tone said everything. There was kindness in it, an invitation, not a demand. The girl hesitated, glancing between his hand and his eyes. Her heart pounded as she reached out tentatively, her small fingers just brushing the edge of his hand. The human didn't move, didn't pull away, but instead he smiled. A small, reassuring smile that made her chest tighten with confusion and relief. It was the first time in her life that she had ever been so close to a human without feeling the overwhelming fear that usually accompanied their presence, and it felt strange, but in a way it was a relief. She wasn't sure where this moment would lead, but she felt for the first time that maybe, just maybe, this human wasn't the enemy. And for the first time, the girl allowed herself to believe that she wasn't alone. The girl stood there, her tiny hand still resting on the human's palm. She felt a strange warmth emanating from his skin, a kind of comfort that she had never experienced from any creature before. She wasn't sure why she had reached out. Her instincts told her to be wary, to stay distant. But there was something about the human that drew her in. Something different. The human did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on her, studying her, with a depth that made her feel seen in a way she had never known. He wasn't just looking at her as a creature to be feared or contained. No, his gaze was soft, almost searching, as if he were trying to understand her, to find the connection that had eluded them both for so long. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The girl's heartbeat was the loudest sound in the world as she processed the situation. She had always been told that humans were the ultimate predators, ruthless and merciless. Yet here she was, standing in front of one, and he wasn't attacking her. He wasn't treating her as a threat to be eliminated. Instead, he was treating her like a person. It was confusing. It made no sense. But it felt real. The girl swallowed, hard, feeling the weight of the decision before her. Could she trust this human? Could she trust him with her life? She had been taught that humans only ever took lives, took freedom, took everything. But the human before her seemed different. His hand, still open and gentle, was an invitation rather than a trap. His expression, though hard to read, through his features gave her no reason to be afraid. But trust wasn't something she could give so easily. It wasn't something she could forget in a moment just because a human had treated her with kindness. Her people's history with humans was filled with pain, with betrayal. She had heard the horror stories, the tales of aliens like her who had been captured and sold, or worse, used for experiments. The girl's mind flashed with memories of her family's warnings, but in her heart, a quiet voice urged her to look beyond what she had been taught. A soft breeze stirred the air, lifting the girl's silver-blue hair. And for the first time, since their encounter, she took a cautious step forward. She wasn't running, she wasn't hiding. She was simply moving closer, trying to understand this human who had given her nothing but kindness. The human, noticing her movement, slowly withdrew his hand, letting her take the lead. He wasn't rushing her. He wasn't demanding anything from her. He was just waiting for her to decide what came next. The girl, now only a few inches away from him, looked up into his eyes again. His gaze hadn't shifted. It was steady, calm, like an anchor in a sea of uncertainty. Something in her stirred, a feeling she didn't recognize, but one that felt safe. It was almost as if, for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. The human's presence was a reassurance that things might be different, that not all stories were true, and that maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong about everything. She felt a tug in her chest. Could this be real? Could this strange, unfamiliar creature offer her a kind of safety that her own kind had never known? She didn't know the answer, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't as scared as she had been before. Slowly, cautiously, the girl took another step forward, this time without hesitation. Her small body trembled only slightly, a sign that her fear, while not gone, was easing. She looked down at his hand again, now hovering just inches from her, and then back up into his eyes. There was no danger, no threat, just calm. The human's face softened further, his lips curving into the smallest of smiles. It was subtle, but it was enough to reassure her. Maybe he wasn't like the humans she had been warned about. Maybe he wasn't the monster she had feared. Maybe he was something else. Are you? She didn't know how to ask the question, but she felt the need to say something, to break the silence. She had been taught not to trust, not to speak freely. But in this moment, she felt an overwhelming urge to be heard. Are you different? Her voice was a soft whisper, barely audible, but it carried with it all the doubt, the fear, and the curiosity she had kept bottled up inside. The human's response was not immediate, but his eyes sparkled with an understanding that spoke louder than any words ever could. He didn't need to answer her question. He didn't need to say anything at all. His actions, the care with which he moved, the patience with which he waited, spoke volumes. The girl felt a small sense of peace settle over her. She couldn't explain it, but she knew that she was no longer in danger. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to relax. This was a new feeling, one she had never known. It was the beginning of something unexpected, something she hadn't dared to hope for. As she stood before the human, her fears fading with each passing second, the girl realized that she was no longer afraid of what would happen next. Whatever this new connection was, she was ready to explore it. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she felt as though there was hope, a possibility of something better, and that was all she needed to take the next step. Virtue. Girl stood beside the human, her small frame barely reaching his waist. Her heart was no longer racing, though she could still feel the gentle pulse of uncertainty beneath her calm exterior. The human had not moved, but his presence was more reassuring now. His actions, slow, deliberate, and kind, told her more than any words ever could. The fear that had once gripped her had begun to dissolve, replaced by something new: curiosity. The human had been patient, so patient. He hadn't rushed her, hadn't demanded anything of her. His silence spoke volumes, as though he were saying, "I'm here, and I'll wait for you to be ready." It was a contrast to everything she had been told about humans. She had been taught to expect aggression, to fear every step they took. But here she was, standing beside one and feeling something she had never thought possible: trust. He slowly reached down, pulling something from the small pouch at his waist. The girl's eyes narrowed as she watched him. Was it a weapon? Had she been wrong to trust him? Her instincts screamed at her to back away, to run. But then, with a soft gesture, the human placed a small object on the ground before her. It was a piece of fruit, round, with a soft, translucent skin. It looked nothing like the food she had known. There were no sharp smells, no signs of poison. Just a soft, inviting glow from its surface, as if it were calling her. She glanced up at him, unsure. He wasn't looking at her, but rather at the fruit, as if silently urging her to take it. The girl hesitated. She had never been offered food by a human. She had always been told that humans saw others as weak, as something to consume or control. She had been taught to distrust any offer made by one of them. But the human's calm demeanor made her wonder if this moment could be different. Slowly, she stepped forward. Her gaze still wary, she bent down, carefully sniffing the fruit. Its scent was sweet, with hints of something unfamiliar but pleasant. She touched it lightly, and the skin was soft, yielding under her fingers. She had no reason to believe it was dangerous, and yet, the girl was still reluctant. Could it really be that simple? The human didn't speak, but he watched her closely, his eyes patient and understanding. She could feel his gaze like a steady hand, reassuring her that this was no trick. He wasn't trying to deceive her. His quiet presence, his calm nature, had disarmed the wall of fear she had built up over her life. For the first time, the girl felt that maybe, just maybe, she could let go of her fear. With a deep breath, she picked up the fruit. It was lighter than she expected, almost fragile in her small hands. The girl took a small bite, her teeth sinking into the soft flesh. The taste exploded in her mouth, a mixture of sweetness and tartness, unlike anything she had ever tasted. It was delicious. She hadn't known food could taste like this, like something so pure and fresh. Her eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, she forgot to be afraid. The human watched her, still silent as she ate. She wasn't sure what she expected, but there was something reassuring about how he simply waited, as if letting her take her time. There were no demands, no expectations. He wasn't trying to force her into anything. He was just there. As she finished the fruit, the girl felt a warmth spread through her. It wasn't just the food that had filled her with a new sense of peace, but the act itself. The human had given her something without asking for anything in return. It was kindness, plain and simple. And in that moment, the girl realized something. She was not the prey here. She was not the thing to be hunted or consumed. For once, she was something else, a being worthy of care and attention. She looked up at him again, her gaze softer now. There was no malice in his eyes, no hidden agenda, just an openness, a willingness to understand. And for the first time in her life, the girl felt truly seen. It was a strange feeling and one she wasn't sure how to process, but it was there, growing inside her like a seed waiting to bloom. The human extended his hand once more, not as a threat, but as an invitation. It wasn't the same hand that had been extended before, not the one that had first made her hesitate in fear. This time, the gesture was different. This time, it was an offering of friendship, of understanding. The girl took a step forward again, drawn by the human's calm presence. She didn't know what to make of it all. She didn't understand why he was doing this. But she wasn't afraid anymore. The strange, comforting warmth she felt when she was near him told her that things could be different. Things could be better. She reached out, her small hand meeting his. It was an uncertain touch, but it was a touch nonetheless. The human didn't pull away. He didn't flinch. His hand closed around hers, gentle, secure, and real. And in that moment, the girl knew that this was no ordinary encounter. This was something far more important, something she had never thought possible. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for her to escape the fear that had ruled her life. Maybe the human could be her ally, her protector, rather than the monster she had always imagined. Only time would tell, but for now she didn't need to have all the answers. All she needed was to take the next step, and for the first time she was ready. The girl stood in silence, her hand still gently held within the human's. The world around them seemed to fall away, the strange alien noises of the planet, the wind rustling the leaves in the distance, the tension that had once gripped her every movement, all of it faded into the background. In this moment, there was only her and the human, standing together in an unspoken agreement. For the first time, the girl allowed herself to relax. Her body, which had been wound tight with fear and suspicion, now felt lighter. She had expected danger, but instead she had found nothing but kindness. The human's hand was warm and solid, the grip gentle but firm. She felt no threat, no violence in his touch, only the comfort of something safe. She looked up at him, her eyes still wide but now filled with curiosity instead of fear. The human hadn't tried to manipulate her, hadn't forced anything upon her. He had simply been patient, waiting for her to come to him on her own terms. And she realized, with a start, that this was the first time anyone had ever done that for her. The girl took a small breath, unsure of what to do next. She had been taught to run, to hide, to fight back if she ever found herself in a situation like this. But now, standing here with this human, she didn't want to run. She didn't want to hide. She didn't feel the need to fight. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was allowed to simply exist without fear, without the weight of her past. The human didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes spoke volumes, and his silence was more powerful than words. He was offering her something she hadn't thought possible, a chance to trust, a chance to experience something beyond the fear that had ruled her existence. She wasn't sure why he was doing this, why he was offering her this moment of peace. But somehow she knew it wasn't a trick. It wasn't a test, it was real. The girl's hand slowly squeezed his, and in that simple, small gesture, something shifted between them. It was a moment of mutual understanding, an acknowledgement that they were no longer enemies, no longer strangers to each other. They were two beings connected in a way that was beyond explanation. The human stepped back, still holding her hand, and motioned for her to follow him. He didn't rush her. He didn't pull her along or try to force her into anything. He simply walked slowly, as if giving her the freedom to decide for herself whether or not to go with him. The girl hesitated for only a moment before following. Her steps were tentative, her feet still unsure, but she was moving. She was moving forward. As they walked together, the girl took in her surroundings for the first time. The planet was alien, yes, but it didn't feel hostile anymore. The harsh, jagged rocks she had once feared now seemed less threatening. The strange plants, once twisted and unfamiliar, now looked like part of a world that could be understood. It was as if everything had shifted, as if the world around her had changed because her perspective had changed. She could hear the soft thud of the human's footsteps ahead of her, but she wasn't afraid. She wasn't scared of what lay ahead. She wasn't sure what would come next, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she had a choice. She wasn't bound by fear. She wasn't trapped in her past. She was free to choose her future, and for the first time, that felt like a real possibility. The human led her to a small clearing, a place where the sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the ground. The air was warm, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of earth and life. The girl looked around, taking in the peaceful surroundings. This place, though foreign, felt safe. It felt right. The human let go of her hand, stepping aside to allow her space. He didn't crowd her, didn't push her to do anything. He simply stood, watching her with those patient eyes, waiting. The girl felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude stir inside her. She had never been given such space, such freedom. She had always been told what to do, what to fear, what to expect. But now, here, she was allowed to decide for herself. The girl took another step forward, her eyes scanning the clearing. She noticed a small pool of water in the center, its surface calm and clear. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She didn't feel like prey. She felt human, in a way she never had before. She felt like she belonged. The human watched her quietly, his gaze soft, but never leaving her. He didn't need to say anything. His actions, his care, his patience had already spoken for him. And for the first time, the girl understood. She understood that this wasn't about what the human could take from her, but about what he could give her: safety, kindness, trust. Without thinking, the girl walked to the edge of the pool, kneeling down to touch the cool water with her fingers. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peace of the moment wash over her. She was no longer afraid. She was no longer alone. When she opened her eyes again, she looked at the human, her eyes filled with something she had never felt before: hope. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she was ready to face it. And for the first time, she trusted that she wouldn't have to face it alone. The silence between them stretched comfortably, the stillness of the moment settling around them like a warm blanket. The girl sat beside the small pool, her fingers still trailing in the water as she watched the ripples spread out in gentle circles. For the first time in what felt like forever, her thoughts were not filled with fear, but with curiosity. Curiosity about the human who had been nothing like the monster she had been warned about. She glanced up at him, finding him standing a few paces away, his posture relaxed, but his eyes fixed on her, as always. There was no urgency in his stance, no demand for anything. He wasn't asking her to trust him. He had simply given her the space to do so on her own terms. The quiet, patient kindness he had shown, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. After a long pause, the human moved toward her slowly and deliberately. His boots made little sound as he stepped on the soft earth. He stopped a few feet away, not imposing but present, and she could sense the weight of something he had been carrying. It was almost as if he had been holding something back, something he was now ready to share. The girl tilted her head, watching him closely. He was looking at her, but his eyes held a flicker of something deeper, something that made her feel as though she were witnessing something personal, something vulnerable. The human knelt down beside her, not too close, but enough to show that he wasn't afraid of her. She could feel his gaze settle on her, not with judgment or caution, but with understanding, as if he had seen things, felt things, that had brought him to this moment. He opened his mouth, but the words that came out were slow, deliberate, and filled with something she hadn't expected. Sadness. "I'm not from here," he began, his voice quieter than usual, softer, almost like he was speaking to himself. "I came to this place because I had to. I wasn't sent here on a mission. I didn't choose to be here." The girl listened intently, her brow furrowing as she tried to make sense of what he was saying. He wasn't speaking like the warriors she had encountered, who spoke of battle and glory. There was no pride in his tone, no desire to boast. There was only the raw honesty of someone sharing a story that weighed heavily on them. "I was part of a group, a team," he continued, his eyes looking distant as if reliving a memory. "We were meant to explore this world. I didn't know what I'd find, but I didn't expect to find this. I didn't expect to find you." The girl's heart skipped a beat. "Me?" she repeated softly, still unsure of what he meant. The human nodded, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "Yes, you. And the others like you. I didn't expect to find so much pain, so much loss." His voice faltered for a moment, and for the first time the girl saw a crack in his composed demeanor. "I was told that you were just like any other species here, that we could come, study, and leave. That it would all be simple." The girl's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected him to speak like this. He wasn't boasting about victories or conquests. He wasn't talking about alien creatures as things to be captured or studied. No, he was talking about her people with a quiet sadness, as if he regretted something, as if he understood that what they had been through was far more complex than any mission could capture. He looked at her again, his expression shifting as if he were seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. "I was wrong. I didn't understand what it meant to truly see someone, not until now, not until I saw you." The girl's chest tightened. She wasn't sure why his words affected her so deeply. It was just a story, after all. Yet the way he spoke, the raw vulnerability in his tone, made her feel something she hadn't expected. "Hope. You're not like them," the human said softly, almost as if he was reassuring himself. "You're not a thing to be feared or controlled. You're real. And I see that now." The girl took a slow breath, her hand resting in the cool water, still processing the depth of what he had just shared. She had heard of humans who spoke, of aliens as things to be dominated or exploited. But this human, this one who had shown her nothing but patience and kindness, was different. His story, his confession, made her believe that maybe not all humans were the same. "You're not afraid of me?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. It was a question that had been haunting her ever since they had met. She had feared him, but now she was wondering if he had feared her as well. The human's eyes softened as he met her gaze. "No," he said firmly. "I'm not afraid of you. I never was. I was just lost. I didn't know what I was supposed to, but now I think I understand." The girl felt a warmth in her chest, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. It was the warmth of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. She wasn't just an alien to be feared, an object to be studied. She was a person, with a story, with a life that mattered. and the human before her had recognized that, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. "Thank you," she whispered, the words feeling strange on her tongue, but real nonetheless. She wasn't sure why she said them, but they came from somewhere deep inside her, a place she hadn't known existed until now. The human nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "You don't have to thank me," he replied softly. "You've done nothing wrong. You've only lived." For a long time, they sat together in silence, the girl's hand still resting in the water, and the human beside her, each of them, lost in their thoughts. The future was still uncertain, still filled with questions and unknowns, but for the first time, the girl felt that she wasn't alone, not anymore, and that, in itself, was enough. The sun was setting behind the distant hills, casting a warm golden glow across the landscape. The light shimmered on the surface of the small pool where the girl and the human sat, creating soft ripples that danced along the water's surface. The quiet hum of the world around them seemed to lull everything into a peaceful rhythm, the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of strange creatures blending into a melody of calm. For the first time, the girl didn't feel the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. She didn't feel the burden of uncertainty that had plagued her for so long. The human's presence beside her was a constant now, reliable, steady. She had come to realize that the world wasn't as terrifying as she had been led to believe. In fact, it could be beautiful. Her thoughts were interrupted when the human turned to her, his expression soft yet serious. "I don't know what comes next," he said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken emotions. "But I know one thing. I want to help you. I want to make things right if I can." The girl met his gaze, her heart stirring with something new. It wasn't just gratitude this time, it was something deeper. It was a feeling of trust, of connection, of something that neither of them had expected when they first met. She had spent so long hiding, so long running from everything she had feared. But now, sitting beside the human, she felt like she was finally able to stand still, to breathe. He had given her more than safety. He had given her something she never thought possible, a future. "Help me?" she echoed, her voice soft but filled with something that resembled hope. She didn't fully understand what the human meant by those words, but she could sense the sincerity behind them. The fear that had once ruled her thoughts had faded, replaced by a quiet belief that maybe, just maybe, she could find peace. The human nodded, his eyes not leaving hers. "I can't promise everything will be easy. I don't know what the future holds for us or how the rest of your people will react to us, but I can promise that I'll be here, and I'll do whatever I can to make sure you're safe." For the first time, the girl allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a new life, one that wasn't ruled by fear and isolation. The world didn't have to be a place of endless struggle. She could see now that there was a chance for something different, a chance for something better. Why? The question escaped her lips before she could stop it. "Why me? Why are you helping me?" The human smiled, his expression gentle. "Because I've seen you. I've seen the fear in your eyes, and I don't want you to live like that anymore. You're not just an alien, you're a person. And I want to make sure you know that, even if the world doesn't always treat you like one." Her chest tightened at his words, the sincerity in his voice resonating deep within her. He didn't see her as a threat. He didn't see her as an object to be controlled or used. He saw her as a being with her own story, her own life. That was something she hadn't dared to believe could happen. Someone seeing her as she truly was, not just as a thing to be feared. "I don't know how to repay you," she whispered, the words barely audible. She felt a knot of emotion in her throat, a lump that she couldn't explain. The human shook his head, a soft laugh escaping his lips. "You don't have to repay me," he said. "Just live. Live however you want. That's all I ask." Her heart swelled as she realized how simple the human's request was. And yet, it felt like the most important thing anyone had ever asked of her. For the first time, she realized that she didn't have to live in the shadow of fear or despair. She had the power to shape her own destiny, to decide what came next. The girl stood up slowly, her legs a bit shaky at first. She felt the earth beneath her feet, solid and firm. The world wasn't perfect and it wasn't without its dangers, but in this moment she felt like she could face whatever came next. She wasn't alone anymore. The human watched her with a quiet smile, his eyes filled with pride. It was as though in this moment he too saw something new, something stronger than either of them had expected. Together, they had crossed a threshold, leaving behind the fear and uncertainty that had once defined their lives. They had found something new in each other, something that could not be explained by stories of monsters or aliens. The girl turned to the human, her eyes filled with resolve. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, her heart filled with a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. "I'm ready to see what comes next." And with that, they walked forward together, side by side. The future was still unknown, but for the first time the girl felt like she was walking into it with someone who cared, someone who saw her not as a creature to be feared, but as a person with a future worth living. Whatever the world held, she knew one thing for certain. It was no longer a place of darkness and fear. It was a place where anything was possible, and it was a place where she was no longer alone.